Getting frustrated over a video game and breaking your controller in anger is one thing. However, there are also games that expect you to use your controller in a way that destroys them. This design flaw makes the choice to play that specific game a pretty hard one to make, because you don't want to keep buying new controllers. So watch out, cause here are 10 games that literally broke our controllers. The most well-known example of a game destroying controllers must be Mario Party for the N64. The joysticks on the original Nintendo 64 controller were a joy to play with, but after a while they would break down. The stick could become lazy and inaccurate, resulting in a lot of frustration. Mario Party made this problem a little worse by asking the player to rotate the stick like a madman in certain minigames. The joysticks came loose quicker and sometimes even broke because of the torture the players had to put their controllers through. Nintendo must have known the joystick was the Achilles heel of the N64 controller, so why abuse it like they did with Mario Party? That's just cruel, Nintendo. Do you remember the first weeks or months in which you toyed around with your new Wii and did nothing more than some virtual tennis or bowling? Well, we did, and we can say that a flying Wii Mode wasn't an uncommon thing. Yep, we could have tightened the straps the remotes came with, but hey, we were just too lazy. Before the time Nintendo distributed these plastic Wii Mode condoms freely to every Wii user. At least one of our Wiimotes smashed into some furniture and didn't survive that short flight. We had to replace a few of our controllers and stop being lazy when we found a new Wii remote is actually pretty expensive. So, play your games safe or do not play games at all, okay?
Nice throw!
The fact that Super Smash Bros. Came out for the Nintendo 3DS handheld system and that it was actually playable was a small wonder on its own. However, the fighting game asks a lot from you during these intense play sessions. The 3DS Circle Pad functions as the system's joystick, but because of the rapid movements the player controls his fighter with, the Circle Pad got ruined quickly. In a few instances, the top part of the Circle Pad came loose from the lower part, making it much harder to use. And replacing your handheld is quite more expensive than just replacing one of your controllers. Nintendo should have thought of this before releasing this game and let pro players ruin their handhelds in the process. During the 80s and 90s, there were a few video games which tried to simulate athletic sports. Most of the time, these simulations were simple button mashing competitions. The player who repeatedly pushed the button the most more or less won the game. However, the joypads used for playing Konami's International Track and Field on the PlayStation weren't built to endure this violence. These sessions of button bashing resulted in unresponsive buttons and even the buttons itself coming loose and falling out of the controller. However, these problems were even worse when you were a cheap-ass gamer that only bought third-party controllers. It's good to see that Konami doesn't make these button mash fests anymore. In fact, they hardly make any games anymore, but that's a completely different story. Everybody remembers the time of the plastic guitars and drum kits with a certain joy. Nothing beats pretending you're a rock star in front of the television while nobody is watching. However, EA's Rock Band drum kit wasn't that sturdy as it should have been. Many gamers encountered a broken kick pedal after playing a few rock concert classics. Harmonix fixed this error with the release of the sequel by putting a metal plate on the kick plate to make it more stable. However, for some players this was too little too late, Cause who in his right gamer mind is going to buy 2 drum kits, which at that time cost almost $100 a piece? GameCube controllers are pretty sturdy, especially when you compare them with their predecessor. However, this beloved controller was used a lot to play one of the most popular fighting games ever made, Super Smash Bros. Melee. Almost every pro player wasted at least one controller and sometimes even more on the game. Most of the time, the problem has to do with the joysticks, but the L button also became very unstable after a lot of smashing. Sometimes these malfunctions could be repaired, but most of the time, this meant you had to buy a new controller. We know the game is called Smash Bros, but that's just ridiculous.
Ready, fight!
The Xbox 360 controller is almost the perfect controller to many gamers. We say almost because its D-pad is the worst we've experienced in recent times. Most games don't use the D-pad heavily, so there's no problem. Though the fighting game genre uses the D-pad a ton, and these things are way too unresponsive to game with. Gamers try to play games like Dead or Alive 4 or Marvel vs. Capcom 3 with this controller. This means the D-pad has to sustain a lot of pressure it simply isn't built for. It results in the D-pad becoming even more unresponsive. Luckily, the D-pad on the Xbox One controller is a lot better, so it seems that Microsoft learned its lesson.
Ready? Go!
We already know the analog joystick of the Nintendo 64 was a bit of a nightmare for gamers and their wallets. However, Mario Party wasn't the only game that abused the hell out of this ingenious piece of technology. 1080 snowboarding for the Nintendo 64 also was a recipe for joystick-related nightmares. You had to put a ton of pressure on the stick to steer and pull off some nice tricks in the game. That meant that quite a few gamers ended up breaking their N64 controllers with this one.
Go!
A lot of Nintendo DS games use the touchscreen gimmick a little too much, by making you scratch it a ton during gameplay sessions. Smart people bought touchscreen protectors to prevent this from happening, but not everybody noticed this problem. This resulted in the touchscreens getting scratched up and inaccurate. Sometimes it even meant that the whole screen was simply destroyed and you had to buy a new Nintendo DS. A lot of bad third-party games were the cause of this problem, but also games like Oendan, Elite Beat Agents, and Trauma Center Under the Knife made you scratch the screen to oblivion. Better buy those nerdy screen protectors if you want to be safe. The PlayStation 4 controllers are quite an improvement compared to the PlayStation 3 ones. The joysticks feel a lot heavier and sturdier, but there's one flaw. When you play certain games, like UFC for instance, the rubbers of the controller sticks would come off over time. Not only UFC had this problem, but we experienced the same problem while playing other sports games like FIFA and Madden.
It's a real chance! Oh, good save! Great reactions!
Sony does acknowledge the problem and you can send your controller to them for replacement if this happens to you. It's a minor flaw in what's otherwise a great controller. Did your controllers ever get damaged by playing certain games? Let us know in the comments and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.